The bus pulled into Richmond at 6:47 in the morning, and I was the only one who got off. My name is Daniel Reeves. I'm 23 years old, and I just came home from Iraq 3 months earlier than I was supposed to. My duffel bag is slung over my shoulder, and my left knee throbs with every step I take across the empty parking lot. The Virginia air is cold and damp, nothing like the desert I left behind, and for a moment I just stand there breathing it in, trying to remember what normal is supposed to feel like. I haven't called ahead. I haven't told anyone I'm coming. The truth is, I don't know what I'm going to say when I get there, because I can't tell them the truth. The cab ride to my parents' house takes 20 minutes. I watch the familiar streets roll by. The high school where I graduated, the diner where I worked summers, the park where my brother taught me to throw a football. Everything looks smaller than I remember. Or maybe I'm just different now. When we pull up to the house, I see my father's truck in the driveway. My brother's car is there too. Sunday morning. They're all home. I pay the driver, grab my bag, and walk up to the front door. My hand hovers over the doorbell for a long moment. Then I knock. My mother opens the door. She's wearing her church clothes, floral dress, pearls, her hair done up the way she always does on Sundays. When she sees me, her face goes white. "Danny?" Her voice cracks. "Oh my God, Danny." She throws her arms around me, and for a second, everything feels okay. For a second, I'm just her son coming home. But then my father appears behind her. He's standing in the hallway, still in his robe, coffee mug in hand. He looks older than I remember, grayer, thinner, the lines around his eyes deeper. He's staring at me like I'm a stranger. "What are you doing here?" he asks. "Not welcome home. Not thank God you're safe. Just, what are you doing here?" "Dad, You're supposed to be deployed until January." His eyes narrow. "What did you do?" My mother pulls back, looking between us. "Tom, don't." I'm asking him a question, Linda. My father sets his coffee down on the hall table and crosses his arms. "Well, what happened, Danny? Why are you home?" I open my mouth, but the words stick in my throat. The words I'm not allowed to say. The truth I'm not allowed to share. Due to the classified nature of your service and the ongoing sensitivity of operations in your sector, you are hereby ordered not to discuss the circumstances of your medical discharge with any civilian personnel, including family members. Violation of this order may result in prosecution under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. I got hurt. I manage. My knee. They sent me home on medical. Medical discharge? My brother's voice comes from the stairs. Jake is 2 years older than me. Built like our father, broad shoulders, square jaw, the kind of guy who looks like he should be in uniform. He never enlisted. Went to college instead, got his business degree, married his high school sweetheart. He's looking at me like I'm something he scraped off his shoe. "You got a medical discharge after 8 months?" Jake descends the stairs slowly, deliberately. "Guys lose legs over there and keep fighting. You hurt your knee and they sent you home." "It's not like that." "Then what's it like, Danny? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you found a way out." "Jake, that's not fair," my mother says, but her voice is weak, uncertain. My father hasn't moved. He's just watching me with those cold, analytical eyes. The same eyes that watched me play football, watched me graduate boot camp. Watch me leave for Iraq with pride shining in them. Now, there's only disappointment. I can't talk about it. I say, finally. I'm not allowed to discuss the details of what happened. It's classified. The silence that follows is deafening. Jake laughs, a short, bitter sound. "Classified. Right. That's convenient. I'm telling you the truth." "Are you?" My father's voice is quiet, but it cuts like a knife. "Because your platoon sergeant called here 2 weeks ago, asked if we'd heard from you, said you left in the middle of an operation, said the unit was still asking questions about what happened." My heart drops into my stomach. He wasn't supposed to. "So it's true." Jake steps forward. "You bailed on your unit?" "No, that's not. I can't explain, but that's not what happened." "Then explain it." My father says, "Right now, explain it to me, Marine to Marine." because I did 2 tours in Vietnam, and I never once abandoned my post. I'm drowning. The walls are closing in. I can see the disappointment in my mother's eyes, the disgust in Jake's face, the cold judgment radiating from my father, and I can't say a single word to defend myself. I didn't abandon anyone. I whisper. I swear to God I didn't. My father stares at me for a long moment. Then he picks up his coffee and turns away. You should go stay somewhere else for a while, he says without looking back, until you're ready to tell us the truth. The years that followed were the longest of my life. I found a small apartment on the south side of town, a 1-bedroom above a hardware store with thin walls, and a radiator that clanked all night. I got a job at a warehouse loading trucks, the kind of work that kept my hands busy and my mind numb. Every morning I woke up at 5, took 2 Advil for my knee, and pushed my body through another day of lifting, loading, pretending everything was fine. But nothing was fine. The rumors started within weeks. Someone from my unit, I never found out who, had told their family that I'd left early, that I wasn't there for the final push through Fallujah. The story spread like wildfire through the veteran community in Richmond. At the VFW, guys I'd known since high school would turn their backs when I walked in. At the VA clinic, other vets would stare at me in the waiting room, whispering to each other, "That's the guy, the one who ran." I stopped going out, stopped trying to explain. What was the point? I couldn't tell them what really happened. I couldn't defend myself without violating direct orders from the Pentagon. So I just disappeared. In 2008, Jake got married. I got the invitation 2 months before the wedding, a formal card with my name handwritten in my mother's perfect cursive. There was no note. "No, we hope you can make it." Just the invitation. I showed up anyway. I sat in the back of the church in my only suit, watching my brother marry Sarah Jenkins in front of 200 people. I saw my father stand as best man, saw my mother cry during the vows, saw all our relatives and family friends celebrating this perfect day for the perfect son. When it was time for family photos, no one called my name. I left before the reception started, drove to a bar on the edge of town, and drank until I couldn't feel anything anymore. In 2012, Jake and Sarah had their first child, a little girl named Emma. I found out on Facebook, saw the photos of my parents holding their granddaughter, their faces glowing with joy. I bought a gift, a pink stuffed elephant in a savings bond, and drove to the hospital. I made it all the way to the parking lot before I saw Jake's post in the family group chat. For everyone asking about visitors, immediate family only for the first week. We want to keep things small and safe for Emma. Hope everyone understands. I sat in my truck, staring at those words for 20 minutes. Then I drove home and put the elephant in my closet, where I wouldn't have to look at it. The nightmare started that year. Not every night, but often enough. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, my knees screaming, the sound of gunfire still echoing in my ears. The VA gave me pills that made me drowsy and therapy sessions that didn't help because I couldn't talk about what actually happened. How do you process trauma you're not allowed to acknowledge? In 2015, everything came to a head. My father had a heart attack, a bad one, massive coronary while he was mowing the lawn. My mother called me from the ambulance, her voice shaking so badly I could barely understand her. I broke every speed limit getting to the hospital. The waiting room was full. Jake and Sarah, my aunts and uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years, family friends who'd known us forever. When I walked in, the conversation stopped. Everyone looked at me. Jake stood up. "What are you doing here?" "Mom called me." "Is he okay?" "He's in surgery." Jake's jaw was tight. They think he's going to make it, but they don't know yet. I nodded, relief flooding through me. Can I see him?" "When he's out." "No." The word hit me like a punch. "Jake, you don't get to just show up now, Danny. You don't get to pretend you're a part of this family when you couldn't even tell us the truth about what you did." "I didn't do anything." "Then why won't you tell us what happened?" Sarah stood beside her husband, her hand on his arm. She'd always been kind to me before the deployment. Now she looked at me like I was toxic. "Why all the secrecy? Why can't you just admit you made a mistake?" "Because it's not. I stopped, my hand shaking. It's classified. I've told you 100 times. It's been 11 years, Danny. My Uncle Frank spoke up from across the room. He'd served in Desert Storm, had always treated me like a nephew who understood what service meant. Now his voice was hard. 11 years, and you're still hiding behind that excuse. Maybe it's time to face the truth. I looked around the room at all these faces. People who'd known me my whole life. People who'd watched me grow up. People who should have known me better than this. And every single one of them thought I was a liar. I'm going to wait here, I said quietly. I'm going to wait until Dad is out of surgery, and I know he's okay. And then I'll leave. I sat down in a chair in the corner, and for the next 6 hours, not one person spoke to me. When my father finally came out of surgery, when they finally let family in to see him, I was the first one to his room. I stood in the doorway watching him sleep, tubes in his arms, monitors beeping, his chest rising and falling in that steady rhythm that meant he was alive. My mother was sitting beside him holding his hand. When she saw me, she started to say something, but then my father's eyes opened. He looked at me. I smiled, relief overwhelming me. Hey, Dad, you scared us. He stared at me for a long moment, and then, slowly, deliberately, he turned his head away. My mother's hand tightened on his. Tom, I'm tired, he said, his voice weak but clear. Tell everyone I need to rest. I stood there frozen, watching my father choose, even from a hospital bed, even after nearly dying, to turn away from me. That's when I knew. Staying silent was killing me just as surely as any bullet. I started the process the next day. First, I filed a Freedom of Information Act request for my service records. It was denied within 2 weeks. Records contain classified information and cannot be released to the public. I filed an appeal. Denied again. I wrote to my congressman. His office sent back a form letter about supporting our troops and thanking me for my service. I wrote to the Department of Defense, the Marine Corps, the Pentagon. Every letter came back with the same answer. Your service records are classified. No exceptions. For 2 years, I hit wall after wall after wall. I spent money I didn't have on lawyers who told me it was impossible, that classified files don't just get unsealed because your family doesn't believe you. I spent nights lying awake researching federal law, reading case studies, trying to find anyone who'd ever successfully done what I was trying to do. Most people would have given up, but I'd been called a coward for 13 years. I'd watched my family turn their backs on me. I'd missed weddings and births and my father's near death because no one believed I was telling the truth. I wasn't giving up. Not now. Not ever. In early 2017, I found Margaret Chun. She was a veterans' rights attorney out of D.C., specializing in cases involving classified service records and wrongful discharge. Her website showed a long list of cases she'd won. Service members who'd been denied benefits, who'd been discharged under questionable circumstances, who'd had their reputations destroyed by bureaucratic red tape. I called her office on a Tuesday afternoon. Her receptionist told me she was booked solid for 3 months. I drove to D.C. anyway. I showed up at her office at 8 a.m. the next morning and told the receptionist I'd wait all day if I had to. I sat in that lobby for 7 hours, reading magazines I didn't care about, drinking terrible coffee from a machine that barely worked. At 3:15 p.m., Margaretchen walked out her office to get more coffee and saw me sitting there. She was in her 50s, maybe, with sharp eyes and graying hair pulled back in a bun. She looked at me, then at her receptionist, then back at me. You've been here since 8? Yes, ma'am. Why? Because I need help, and no one else will listen. She studied me for a moment. Then she sighed. You've got 20 minutes. Make them count. I talked for 3 hours. I told her everything I could tell her. About coming home early, about my family's reaction, about the classified orders, about the rumors and the isolation, and the 13 years of being called a deserter by the people who should have known me best. She listened to every word without interrupting, took notes in a leather journal, asked questions that cut right to the heart of what mattered. When I finally finished, she set down her pen and looked at me. You're not crazy, she said, and you're not a coward. But you need to understand something. What you're asking for is incredibly difficult. Classified records stay classified for a reason. The government doesn't just unseal them because someone's family doesn't believe their story. I know that. Let me finish. She leaned forward. But there are precedents. Cases where files have been declassified or partially unsealed due to personal hardship, reputational harm, or errors in the classification process. It's rare, it takes time, and it requires a very specific legal argument. My heart was pounding. Can you do it? I can try. She smiled slightly. But Danny, this is going to be a fight. It could take months, maybe years. And there's no guarantee we'll win. I've been fighting for 13 years. I said, I can wait. She made calls, dozens of them, filed motions, contacted Pentagon officials, argued with JAG officers and classification review boards. For 6 months, every call ended the same way. Denied. Classified. National security. No exceptions. But Margaret didn't give up. In January 2018, she called me at work. I was on my lunch break eating a sandwich in my truck when my phone rang. Danny. Her voice was tight with controlled excitement. We got it. Got what? Your file. The Pentagon approved a special review under exemption for reputational harm and personal hardship. You're authorized to access your service record under supervised conditions. 1 witness, 1 legal representative. Secure reading room at Quantico. I couldn't breathe. Are you serious? Dead serious. And Danny? The contents can be shared with immediate family under signed non-disclosure, which means you can finally tell them the truth. I dropped my sandwich. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. When? March 10th, 2 p.m. I'll be there with you. She paused. Now comes the hard part. What's that? You have to invite them. I sent the letters on February 14th, 1 to my father, 1 to my mother, 1 to Jake. I kept them short. There's something I've needed to tell you for 14 years. I couldn't before. Now I can. If you want the truth, meet me at the Marriott Conference Center in Quantico on March 10th. At 2 p.m., bring nothing but an open mind. This will be the last time I ask. I didn't expect all of them to come. But on March 10th, at 1:55 p.m., I sat in a gray conference room with Margaret beside me and a federal liaison officer named Agent Corman across the table, watching the door. At 1:57, it opened. My mother came in first, clutching her purse like a shield. Then Jake, his face hard and skeptical. Then my father, walking with a slight limp from the heart attack, his jaw set in that familiar stubborn line. They stood inside the doorway, looking at me, at Margaret, at Agent Corman in his suit and federal ID badge. What is this? Jake asked. Please sit down, Margaret said calmly. We have a lot to cover. They sat, my father at the end of the table, as far from me as possible, my mother beside him, her eyes red like she'd been crying, Jake next to her, arms crossed, radiating distrust. Agent Corman folded his hands on the table. In front of him was a manila folder marked with red stamps. Classified. National security. Authorized personnel only. My name is Special Agent David Corman with the Department of Defense. He began. I've been authorized by the Pentagon to share the contents of Lance Corporal Daniel Reeves' service record with his immediate family under strict non-disclosure agreements. What you hear in this room today cannot be shared with anyone outside this room. Is that understood? My mother nodded. Jake stared. My father's expression didn't change. Agent Corman opened the folder. Lance Corporal Reeves was deployed to Iraq in March 2003 as part of the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines. On September 14, 2004, Corporal Reeves and his 4-man fire team were conducting a reconnaissance patrol in northwest Fallujah when they were ambushed by enemy combatants. My mother's hand went to her mouth. 3 Marines were killed in the initial attack. Corporal James Mitchell, Lance Corporal Robert Hayes, and Private First Class Carlos Diaz. Corporal Reeves sustained shrapnel injuries to his left leg and right shoulder, but continued fighting. Jake's arms uncrossed slowly. While extracting under fire, Corporal Reeves identified an enemy combatant preparing to detonate an improvised explosive device targeting a convoy of civilian contractors approximately 200 meters from his position. Despite his injuries, Corporal Reeves neutralized the threat, preventing the detonation. Agent Corman looked up from the file. The contractors in that convoy were part of a classified diplomatic mission transporting Iraqi political officials to a secure location. The presence of these officials in that sector was not known to most military personnel. Their safety was critical to ongoing peace negotiations. The room was silent. Due to the highly sensitive nature of the operation and the political implications of American military personnel protecting Iraqi officials during this period of the war, Corporal Reeves was placed under operational security protocols. He was ordered not to discuss the engagement, the contractors, or the circumstances of his medical discharge with anyone lacking appropriate security clearance. Agent Corman closed a folder. Corporal Reeves' actions that day saved approximately 23 lives. He was recommended for the Bronze Star with Valor. That recommendation was classified and buried for 14 years due to political sensitivity of the operation. My father was staring at me, really staring at me, like he was seeing me for the first time in 14 years. The Pentagon has reviewed this case and determined that the operational security concerns are no longer relevant. Corporal Reeves' Bronze Star recommendation has been approved. The ceremony is scheduled for June 15th at Camp Lejeune. Agent Corman stood. I'll give you some privacy. He left. The door closed. And for a long moment, nobody moved. Then Jake spoke, his voice cracking. You saved 23 people? I nodded, not trusting my voice. And we called you a coward. Tears were streaming down his face. Jesus Christ, Danny, we called you a coward. My mother was sobbing into her hands. My baby was a hero, and I didn't know. But my father hadn't moved. He was just sitting there, staring at his hands, his shoulders shaking. Dad, I said quietly. He looked up, and I saw tears in his eyes. The first time I'd ever seen my father cry. I told you to leave, he whispered. You came home, and I told you to leave. You didn't know. I should have. He stood up, his chair scraping back. I should have known. You're my son. I should have known. He walked around the table and stopped in front of me. For a moment, we just looked at each other. 2 Marines, 2 generations, 14 years of silence between us. Then he pulled me into his arms and held me so tight I could barely breathe. I'm sorry, he said into my shoulder. God, Danny, I'm so sorry. Jake joined us. Then my mother. We stood there in that conference room, holding each other, crying for the lost years and the words we couldn't say and the truth that had finally set us free. The Bronze Star ceremony was small. Just my platoon commander, Agent Corman, Margaret, and my family. My father pinned the medal to my chest with shaking hands. When he stepped back and saluted me, I saw pride in his eyes. The same pride I remember from the day I left for boot camp. We're not perfect now. We're still learning how to be a family again. There are still awkward moments. Still things we don't know how to say. But we're trying. Jake's daughter Emma is 7 now. She calls me Uncle Danny and asks me to tell her stories about the Marines. I tell her the ones I'm allowed to tell, the funny ones, the ones about friendship and courage, the ones that make her laugh. Someday, when she's older, I'll tell her the rest. My father and I go to the VA together now. He's been carrying Vietnam for 50 years without saying a word. We sit in group therapy and listen to each other's stories and try to heal the wounds that don't show on the outside. My mother calls every Sunday. Sometimes we just talk about nothing. The weather, what she's cooking, how work is going. But sometimes, late at night, she calls just to say she loves me, just to make sure I know. People ask me if I'm angry, if I resent the lost years. The truth is complicated. I'm angry that I had to fight for 14 years to prove my innocence. I'm angry that my brothers died in Fallujah, and I couldn't even tell my family their names. I'm angry that the system that sent me to war was the same system that silenced me when I came home. But I'm not angry at my family. Not anymore. Because they did what humans do. They tried to make sense of something that didn't make sense. They filled in the blanks with the only story that seemed to fit. And when the truth finally came out, they had the courage to admit they were wrong. That takes a different kind of bravery. My name is Daniel Reeves. I'm a Marine, a son, a brother, an uncle. For 14 years, I was called a coward, but I never stopped knowing the truth. And that truth, the one I carried alone in the dark for so long, that truth set all of us free. Semper Fi.